So guess what? I'm here with the miserable liberal, Dave Reinitz and Ron Placone. Hi, everybody.
Hello, Jimmy.
So there's a real scary thing happening. The McCarthy Red Scare thing, the Democrats revived that. And I just went to the Turner Classic Movie Festival where Lee Grant was featured. She was a 24-year-old actress who gave a speech at the funeral for an actor who, instead of testifying at the House of Un-American Activities Committee, had a heart attack over it. He said, he goes, I got a weak heart. I don't think I'll be able to make it through the testimony. He did. He had a heart attack and died. She gave a speech at his funeral. She was immediately blacklisted. For 12 years, Lee Grant couldn't work. They did that to teachers. They would send FBI guys to teachers, to schools, get the union leaders, get rid of them. Right? So now we're doing that in America. Now we're doing a phony war again. There's a false flag in Syria. Why are we in Syria? Nobody tells you. We're there because we want to help people. While we're killing kids in in Yemen, Iraq, Libya, Afghanistan, no matter where they are, we'll kill them. We want a torture facility in Cuba, but we're in Syria because we care about people. We're in Syria because there's a pipeline they want to put through it. That's why we're there. And Tulsi Gabbard comes on TV to talk about it in a real way, like, hey, let's have peace because this is crazy. We did this in Iraq. Look how it turned out. We did this in Afghanistan. Look how it turned out. We're doing this in Libya. We did it in Libya. Look how it turned out. We want to do it again in Syria. Let's not do this. What are you going to replace Assad with? And why do you want to overthrow him in the first place? Why are we teaming up with ISIS and Al-Qaeda in Syria? These are all the shit they don't talk about on the news. The news won't tell you that it's ISIS and Al-Qaeda we're working with to overthrow Assad. Yeah, we're training them and arming them. ISIS and Al-Qaeda. I bet that works out great. So when we get rid of Assad, who are we going to replace him with? ISIS and Al-Qaeda. So here's Tulsi Gabbard come on and say, hey, this is all crazy. Listen to what she says.
An investigation for these horrific chemical weapons attacks. I'll be the first one to denounce him, but the key is now with President Trump's reckless military strikes last night. It flew directly in the face of the action that the UN was working on at that time to launch an independent investigation, to find out exactly what the facts are, who was involved and who was responsible.
So that seems pretty sober. That seems like, oh, thank God a grown-up came into the room. And she said, hey, let the UN do their investigation. Let's find out what the facts are before we, I don't know, start a war. Maybe we find out what the facts are before we launch Tomahawk cruise missiles into someone else's country and maybe start World War III. Maybe we do that. We wait for the UN to investigate. Doesn't that sound rational to you guys?
Sounds perfectly rational.
That sounds rational. You have a master's degree. You're a teacher. That sounds rational.
Sounds sensible, certainly.
You're a business owner, Dave.
It makes sense.
Sounds rational to you,
yes.
right? Ron, what about you? Now you have a master's degree, and you tour the country playing colleges. What does it sound like to you?
You know, even though shooting first and asking later has always worked out swimmingly for the United States, I feel like this time, yeah, I'm with that too.
So she's saying exactly what Ron said. Let's not shoot and ask questions later like we did in Iraq and Libya. Let's wait. Let's wait. Let's get the. Remember like in 2013 when there was a false flag gas attack back then that was proven to be a false flag? Remember? Good thing we didn't. So thank God we have a congresswoman like that doing that. Here's the thanks you get for doing that, for calling for sober investigations and not rushing to war. Here's the thanks you get from that. Now, these aren't right-wing maniacs. Here's your left-wing warmongers.
That is Hawaii Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard. She's an Iraq vet and member of the Foreign Affairs Committee, and she's casting doubt on the president's claim that the Syrian government was indeed behind the chemical attack that killed as many as 100 people last Tuesday. Let's bring in Howard Dean, former Vermont governor, former DNC chair, and an MSNBC contributor, and Republican strategist Susan Del Percio, both front and center right here. Good to have you guys. Howard, how do you respond to Tulsi Gabbard?
I think it's outrageous. There's a long, well-known history, both in our Intelligence Committee, Amnesty International, Doctors Without Borders. Every single one of these agencies has said that Assad is using chemical weapons.
So then, I guess you would be for an investigation because you'll know how it's going to turn out. The investigation will prove that it's definitely him, and then we get to live by our standards of having an investigation before we invade another country. Remember how we did in Iraq? We were all sure. Everybody was sure. There could be no doubt. We were all sure. And by the way, this is a guy who was an anti-war candidate. ran against the Iraq War. He used to say he's from the Democratic wing of the Democratic Party. And here he is, couldn't be beating the war for drums more and more irresponsible. Is there a bigger menace to the country than someone who beats the war for drunk and shames someone who calls for an investigation before we bomb someone? These people are disgusting. This is exactly what Chomsky talks about. They're doing it right in front of your eyes. They did it in the first Iraq War, and they're doing it now. This is really happening right in front of your eye. Hey, how does war propaganda work? Here it is. Even when accidentally someone came on to give a sober call for an investigation, they immediately bring on this.
And you know what? I'm insulted every time I see Howard Dean. You know, I had faith in Howard Dean once upon a time. And, you know, when I see this chyron that says former Governor Howard Dean, well, how about we say current lobbyist for pharmaceuticals and warmonger.
And warmonger.
And he wears that sweater like it's just going to soften him.
Well, it does, because I get the impression he's more like a Mr. Rogers.
Yeah.
Pro-war.
Yeah.
There's more to this.
Barbarian. He's murdered 500,000 of his own people. I can't.
How many people did we murder in Iraq, Howard? How many people did he murdered 500,000 of his own people? How many people did President Lincoln murder in our Civil War? Is that what you call them, murder? Or would you call those, what do you call those? Did Abraham Lincoln murder Confederate soldiers? Because that's what's happening in Syria. There's a civil war, not so civil, because most of the actors are outside actors being supplied, supported, and funded by the United States, Saudi Arabia, and Qatar. It's not a real civil war. How many did we kill in Iraq? Howard? Should someone bomb us? How many kids got lead poison in Flint? Should someone bomb us? How many heads did we crack at Occupy Wall Street? How many people got injured at Standing Rock? Should someone bomb us? We run a torture facility in Cuba. Should someone bomb us? We set the fucking Middle East on fire, you warmongering jagoff. Should someone bomb us? 500,000 Iraqi kids died because of our drug embargo in the night. Should someone bomb us? So this is war propaganda at the top of their lungs at 1,000 miles an hour. This is war propaganda from a guy who used to be the head of the Democratic Party and now given a free seat on mainstream news media because he's willing to say this all day long and wag his finger at a veteran. A veteran. Tulsi Gabbard is a veteran who's calling for peace, and this piece of garbage, Howard Dean, and he is sitting there going to shame her. Let's listen to some more.
Some might call Howard Dean a draft dodger, too, FYI.
Is he? Maybe is he? Why don't you go to war, Howard? Howard, when did you go fight in a war? Did you ever do that? Maybe you should shut up then, you warmonger.
Imagine how you could make a statement like that, especially being on the Foreign Relations Committee.
He said, I can't imagine how you can make a statement like that, telling the truth in front of our war propaganda machine. Why would you do that? You know you're going to be ostracized. You know we're going to do to you what we did to Ralph Nader.
Maybe you can make a statement like that because you have an understanding of foreign relations. He answered that question in his own statement. I don't know how you make a statement like that in foreign relations. Maybe because you understand how it works. Maybe because you know how to do your job.
And it's not like she's saying anything radical. She's not saying, make Assad Mr. America. All she's saying is let's look at what actually happened before we blow shit up.
She's calling for an investigation, and he's making that sound like she's crazy.
What do you want facts for?
Calls for an investigation, and they're the mainstream media. She's crazy.
And he's set up here as the Democratic prop.
Yep.
Right. So he's set up as the reasonable guy next to the Republican strategist who's going to say the same exact thing.
I'm going to paraphrase George Carlin, but when it's bipartisan, that means there's an extra big load of shit being shoveled your way. I don't know if I'm butchering it. He said it much funnier and more succinctly. But let's listen to some more Howard Dean.
Imagine what could possibly have been going through her head.
And
I don't know, maybe facts. What could be possibly going through her head calling for the UN to do the proper investigation? Imagine! She doesn't want a future in the Democratic Party or on establishment corporate news. What could possibly be going through her head? Maybe she doesn't want people to die because she's a fucking veteran. She doesn't want more people to die. How many soldiers commit suicide every goddamn day, you fucking warmonger? And you want me to unite again around this shit?
Maybe what's going through her head is an understanding that Donald Trump is the one pushing the fucking button.
Yeah. Oh, now what's going through her head? What's going through your fucking head, Howard Dean? You're calling for Donald Trump to start a war. The guy who's unfit to be in the office. The guy who's an existential threat to our democracy. You can't have him in the commander-in-chief with his finger on the button. Hey, let's have that guy start a war. If there's anyone lower in politics today than Howard Dean, please let me know about him. Because that guy is a scum. He's a warmongering. He doesn't care who gets hurt. He wags his finger at a fucking veteran who's calling for an investigation before we start a war. That's what this guy does? Who could possibly defend this? Him. The guy should be in jail. What a liar.
That end, you put a tweet out there. I'm going to read it to everybody, okay?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so you said that Gabbard should not be in Congress, that this is a disgrace. All she's asking for is proof, though. Is that a...
And there's your pushback. Did you hear the pushback from the MSNBC host? All she's asking for is proof, though. Instead of saying, no, Howard, she's asking for proof, which is the proper thing to do. She's waiting for a UN investigation. I don't know if you remember what happened in Iraq, Libya. She's waiting for, that's what you're supposed to do. That's not how she said it. At least she said it. And now let's listen to Howard Dean steamroller.
If you're on the Foreign Relations Committee and you haven't seen the proof in the last 5.5 years that Assad is a butcher and used chemical weapons, there's something the matter with you.
Again, that's just lying. He's just lying at the top of his lungs at 1,000,000 miles an hour. And he's saying there's something wrong with a veteran, Tulsi Gabbard, who doesn't want to rush to war before there's an investigation. There's something wrong with her. Even though all that stuff he just said is fucking false. And we've proved it on this show. Other people have proved it. That false flag gas attack in 2013 was just that. Was done by ISIS with gas gotten from Turkey.
And he did get a deferment, by the way. He did.
Oh, Howard Dean got a deferment?
Yes, he did.
Oh, so
because of back problems. But, if he didn't have that, he would have wanted to serve.
So, of course, huge coward. Hey, it's Coward Dean. Hey, everybody, it's former Governor Coward Dean. Current Coward Dean. He's really turning out to be the worst amongst us. He's about as bad as they get because he's on the left. So he gives cover to warmongers instead of standing up like Tulsi Gabbard. That's what they do to you. If you stand up and ask for an investigation, look what they'll do to you. Former head of the DNC. They don't get much worse than Howard Dean. But this is, and it's not just Howard Dean, but everybody, the whole Democratic Party's doing that to Tulsi Gabbard. Is Bernie going to stand up for her like she stood up for him? Bernie's also tweeting out propaganda, saying that Assad is a monster and gassed his own people before an investigation. That's called war propaganda. Even Bernie Sanders is doing it. So that's what makes me depressed, sad, and scared for our future. Because it's exactly what happened to the run-up to the war, Iraq war. The Democrats got on board. And we have no anti-war party. You remember what happened at the DNC convention when the people were protesting Leon Panetta, the warmonger that he is? They turned the lights out on him and turned sound cannons on him. The anti-war wing of the Democratic Party. And this is what we have now. A guy like Howard Dean shaming someone who calls for an investigation. This former soldier, not a big enough warmonger for Howard Dean. She won't bomb quick enough. You're not going to shoot first and ask questions later? What could possibly be going through your mind? This is what Howard... And this guy is going to continue to be brought on cable television for his opinion. These other kind of geniuses who go on cable television. These are the geniuses. And if you ever get a chance to go on this network, on cable television, and you don't knock this guy down, and you don't knock Rachel Maddow down, and you don't knock down Chris Hayes, and you get a chance to go on their shows, then you're a fucking coward too. You're a glass-jawed coward puke. Because that's why I'm never going to get invited on these fucking shows. You think they'll ever have me come on here and tell Howard Dean right to his fucking face that he's a warmonger and a coward and a draft dodger? And that all the stuff he's saying is provably false? And how dare you shame a veteran for calling for the proper investigation from the UN? You disgusting human being. I'm done. But that's what's happening. And right now, YouTube and the Wall Street Journal, they're all making sure shows like us aren't monetized. You know what is monetized? That shit. They're making sure that they're trying to make sure this voice doesn't get out there. That these ideas, this anti-war news show doesn't get out there. Right now, that's happening. They're taking away our money. So maybe we'll go away. But I'm not going away because it turns out our audience is supporting us. Through Patreon, through our premium program. Anybody have anything to say? This is beyond the pale. There aren't enough swear words in the world to hurl at Howard Dean. The guy should be locked up. Talk about no conscience. No character. Zero character. Zero. Howard Dean.
It's just so heartbreaking because, when he was running for president, and he was talking about single payer from a doctor's perspective, years and years ago. It was like he was an easy guy to get behind. And the 50 state strategy for the Democratic Party, and he seemed like he made sense. And then obviously, he just gets dragged into the muck, and then this is what you end up with. You're right. It's so disappointing.
Well, according to the New York Times article in 2003, they highlight his career. And there's this excerpt that says, in the 10 months after his graduation from Yale, time he might otherwise have spent in uniform, Dr. Dean lived the life of a ski bum in Aspen, Colorado. His back condition did not affect his skiing the way the rigors of military service would have. He said, nor did it prevent him from taking odd jobs like pouring concrete in the warm months and washing dishes when it got cold.
So I will officially say today's scum of the earth, how Keith Olbermann had worst person in the world. Today's coward scum of the earth, Howard Dean. Scum of the earth, worst person in the world, Howard Dean. A draft dodger now wagging his finger at a fucking veteran who's standing up for peace. If you can show me what makes someone scummier than that, I don't think there is anything than that. You want other people to get killed in a war that you're too cowardly to fight in, and then you try to shame, you smear a veteran who's calling for an investigation, which is the proper thing to do. Howard Dean, today's shittiest person in the world. Hey, our next live Jimmy Dore show is April 24th. April 24th, live in Burbank. We do 2 shows a month, live shows, so get your tickets right down there, jimmydorecomedy.com.